I'm going to open with a listener call.
Hey, David and Scott, this is First Bit. Ryan from NJ calling again this week. I don't have a long message. I just want to shout out NVS fins. We had some waves yesterday here in New Jersey finally, and I wound up losing a fin. This is an odd circumstance. Anyway, I needed one side bite for my 2+1 setup. I emailed customer service. They got back to me in minutes. Long story short, this is 24 hours later, and a fin's already routing in the mail. So I just want to say this is not the first time I've had excellent customer service from MVS fins, but shout out to those guys. Anyone who needs fins, my recommendation is go to MVS fins online or wherever they're sold near you. These guys are fantastic. The fins are fantastic. And yeah, that's it. Hope you boys are both are well. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Chat soon. Peace. Bye.
surfnvs.com, Scott.
How great is that? What a wonderful call from Ryan. And I've had that same experience with NVS. Leif and Jamin are so customer service oriented. Man, I get fins quickly, man. Like I'll get a new board. I'll reach out to those guys. They'll make recommendations. And I've got an email that says fins are on the way, you know? And so I'm a big fan of the fin designs, of course, and the fin materials, the materials they make their fins with. But just as important, the customer service you get is next level.
Customer service is increasingly important to me nowadays, the older I get. Partially because it's gone away since my youth. And you would think that in the digital era, it would just go away. But it's great to see this resurgence where I think it went away. And so then brands or people just learn that they appreciate it. And that's a value that they can add to the marketplace. So great to hear from them and a listener, of course, Ryan in New Jersey. So surfnvs.com is where you go to get your fins. And then also I wanted to mention Real Water Sports just dropped a video review, surfboard review video with Devon Howard, reviewing the Channel Islands mid twin. So it's the mid-length design, but in a twin fin format. And I just want to say Devon Howard is potentially the best surfboard reviewer of our time.
I was just going to say, when I watched this, I thought to myself, okay, Stab needs to get a hold of Devon for the electric acid surfboard test because he can convey what he's feeling on the wave and the way the board's working. And he's obviously a great surfer. So big fans. Check out, go on to the YouTube, Real Water Sports YouTube, and check out the mid-twin review with Devon Howard. Great surfing and great insights from Devon.
He's so calm. There's not a word that's unnecessary. He says just the right amount of words. They're all impactful. They're relatable. And yeah, vote for Devon Howard for best surfboard reviewer of all time.
There you go. He's got our vote.
As we see some movement at the takeoff zone, it's Kelly Slater grabbing rail.
Yeah, guy, everybody. It's Spit. It's the Spit Podcast. David Lee Scales, Scott Bass with you, talking all things surf. It's Wednesday, January 8th. It's, man, guess what? 2025 is coming at us fast and furious. It's already, we're more than a week in, and it feels like it's a good thing. Like I'm energized for the new year and for all the projects and stuff that are coming our way. So, David, good morning.
Good morning to you. I just wanted to state it's crazy Santa Ana winds here. Probably not down where you are, I would imagine, right?
No, it's not that bad at all.
So Orange County and LA County, and that has fueled the flames, literally, of the fires that are taking place in the Palisades right now and elsewhere, actually, in LA. But I've gotten a number of emails or messages from listeners overnight asking about our well-being, just to check in to see if we're anywhere near those fires. And the answer is we are not. Scott and I are both safe, but they are apocalyptic. It is the devastation, especially in the Palisades, all the way down to the beach, down to PCH, onto the lifeguard towers on the other side of PCH, on the sand itself, is like nothing I've ever seen before.
Yeah, I'm sadly, I'm sort of out of the news cycle loop. I do know there's tons of horrific fires up there. That's obvious. I mean, it's kind of everywhere, but I haven't really tuned into what's happening. And
homes, everybody's being evacuated. It's this huge footprint. If you look at the map, and it's a lot of residential. So it's in the past, where it could be in Santa Monica Mountains or in Malibu or something where there aren't as many homes.
Hmm.
This is like Pacific Palisades that is just all residential, in
Yeah.
addition to Santa Monica Mountain and elsewhere. So it's out of control and raging, and it's because it's 30-mile-an-hour winds, so it's unpredictable and fast moving.
Wow. And I guess even stronger winds than that on occasion. The gusts, right, are getting stronger. So yeah, just I've seen some stuff on Instagram, right, where the fire jumps over the PCH and basically takes out I think the Topanga lifeguard towers or some Santa Monica lifeguard towers. And wow, it's just, I mean, and it's happening right now as we speak. So
Yeah.
it's horrific. And yeah, our hearts uh, go out to those people that are dealing with that right now. Loss of life and property. It's horrible.
Yeah, totally. And like I said, good note is Scott and I are totally removed for anybody who was wondering.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
what do you
Scott,
got for us, David?
we've got the Hui Backdoor Shootout. We've got, oh, I wanted to tell you, I interviewed Aloe Sliber.
I saw that.
That's his official name. I think I mispronounced it last time you asked me, how do you pronounce his name? And I gave you a very convicted answer, as if I knew what I was talking about. Slebir, I think is what I said.
Yeah.
Alessandro Sliber. He goes by Aloe. But 23 years old. I just reached out to him because I was like, you know, I don't know, obviously, anything about him. And he
Yeah.
just rode what is potentially the biggest wave in history that's ever been documented.
Yeah.
We should know more, you know? And
Yeah.
so it's as simple as me sending him an Instagram DM and him responding quickly. And he's like, dude, I would love to do that. Yeah, let me know whenever. So we connected over the weekend. And I'll just give you a brief kind of overview. Um, Smart, humble, he's got a college degree, he's fit, he has a day job, and he works super hard to be at Mavericks on any big swell.
Yes. That's the vibe I was getting just from the little Instagram feed that I saw from others that are chiming in. I think Jojo Roper just put, hey, like thumbs up, solid human being right there, or something like that. And, coming from Jojo, if you're getting his stamp of approval, Aloe seems like a great guy. This is going to be a good listen. And wow, he kind of checks all those boxes of just the hardcore, dedicated, in it for all the right reasons. And I mean, really, dude, if your whole life is geared towards Mavericks, you're in it for the right reasons. In other words, you're not like, raising your flag and going, I'm going to conquer kind of point within the next
Yeah.
5 years. Look at me, it's more like, look, head down, just doing it because I love it. And I'm stoked for him. And I'm stoked to listen to your latest interview.
Well, I was just impressed. I mean, I'm conditioned to feel like every young person is interested in fame because so much of what I receive is on Instagram and that's what survives there or thrives there. And so I just, it's like he just had this huge springboard opportunity basically. And I expected him to be leveraging it to try to do something. And he's not. I'm like, did you celebrate that night? He's like, no. I just
Tired.
I was, yeah, I had to be in bed early because it's going to be pumping tomorrow. I'm like, well, did you set up a YouTube channel? It's like, what? Like, did you talk to management? He's like, who would I even reach out to? Like, I have no idea what you're talking about, you
He's like,
know?
you are my management.
I'm like, bro, this is like,
Yeah.
do you want to have a career for one winter or 10 winters? Because it's just a matter of reaching out to a manager or whatever and using this opportunity. And it was clear to me that he had never thought to that next step. Like his only thought was be at Mavericks when it's pumping. What do I have to do to get in that position? There was never a thought in his mind in his 23 years of what comes next. And so amazingly, now he's in the next phase if he wants to do something with it. But that's neither here nor there to him, which I really, really appreciated. And the other thing is smart, just like having a conversation with a 23-year-old who's just attentive, listens to your questions, fully forms answers, is able to articulate them, was just a total joy. So I'm a huge fan of him.
That's so cool. And what does he do for work?
So he's working in cement through this through the summer,
Yeah.
doing cement work, and
Yeah.
then got a job with Florence as a sales rep for like
Oh, good.
San Luis Obispo through Oregon. So the cement work, I guess, is more seasonal. So he's doing a lot of it during the summertime. And then at the end of it, somebody who he knew through surfing was like, hey, I'm going to put you in contact with Pat O'Connell because they need a sales rep up here and maybe you'd be a good fit for the job. So you see Florence stickers on his board, but he's not actually, as far as I understood, not a team rider officially. He's just a sales rep who's doing double duty. He's
Yeah.
the ultimate sales rep.
Yeah, that's good. And frankly, I don't think these brands need too many team riders. You need one or two. And if you're Florence, you're covered. You don't need any more team riders. But I love,
Although they didn't think they did, but they do have cold water product that they sell. And he's now the cold water tester with the most street cred.
yeah. Well, that's great. And I hope that works out for him because pouring concrete can be backbreaking. And well,
Well,
good.
his college degree is in legal studies. He's got a
Mhm.
bachelor's degree, and his plan was to go back to get, the graduate degrees and then potentially work as a
Yeah.
lawyer. So
Yeah.
that's all in the cards too. But
Good.
yeah,
I hope he does both. You can do both. You can work and get your degree. I'm a big fan. I don't know the guy, but everything that I've seen so far points to somebody that you'd want to know, and and you know what? He reminds me of a lot of us that when we were in our 20s, we were just so dedicated. It was either, you were dedicated to blacks, or you get older and you're dedicated to wherever. There's other, down here in San Diego, you might find yourself dedicated to Todos Santos, and then your life changes a little bit and you get dedicated to, some spot in San Diego. And, you know, I totally get where he's at. He's in that really fun place when you're in your, mid 20s, and you've got kind of your health by the handle. You've got everything kind of geared towards doing what it is that you love to do. And tip of the cap to him. Now this wave that he rode, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's over 100 feet, right? I mean, it's just ridiculous. And there were some massive waves ridden by um, on that day at Mavericks. And David, you and I have spoken about this before, but the thing about 100-foot wave, I don't know. I don't want to take anything away from Nazare. I've never been there. I've never experienced it. I have been out at Mavericks, not surfing, but in a boat watching it. But this specific day that we saw, I think it was the 23rd of December, it was, it's not just this like 100-foot peak that breaks and crumbles. And these were like 700-yard freight trains that are pouring down a reef from the very top, spots where they would normally never take off. And I don't know, something needs to be, it's like, how do you measure a 100-foot wave? Well, this was just a beast. I mean, that day
yeah.
was a day of beasts. And, like I said, it's
Well,
incredible.
there's a slab section at Mavericks, essentially, is kind of what it comes down to. And so there are other slabs on the planet, but none that are as long as Mavericks, as you just stated. And not the whole thing isn't slabbing the entirety of it, but that slab section does make it unique compared to other traditional big wave spots. And then the,
And it's sketchy. The slab isn't necessarily makeable. Like
no,
you've got to negotiate the exit. It's always chandelier doesn't do it justice. There's always a swimming pool sized chunk of water that you have to negotiate at the end, it seems. And holy mackerel, man.
yeah. Well, it's funny to hear you talk about it's relatable because in your 20s, you do kind of get obsessive in that way. What else was interesting was hearing him talk about the Mavericks lineup and the kind of hierarchy or the protocol for how people go or who goes and when. And it's very similar basically to anywhere else. You think there's different rules at play, and I guess there probably are, but there are some basic fundamentals that are at play everywhere in the world. And hearing him kind of talk about that was surprising to me. And then also he was like yesterday, I guess it would have been Saturday because we recorded on Sunday. He said yesterday he and his partner Luca were out there by themselves for 3 hours and it was pumping. So I've had that happen too, where I live in surf Mecca, where you would think there'd be people in the water every day of the year, and lots of times it's overcrowded. But I still find times in the middle of summer during a great swell where it's peaky, warm, and there's nobody around. So if you are as dedicated as you're talking about, you find those moments still.
Yeah. No, absolutely, for sure. And you're keeping your eyes on the wind and you're keeping your eyes on the tides and the buoys, and things can happen quickly, especially this time of year when there's so much swell and so much energy and so many variables moving around regarding wind and tide and stuff and swell energy. And people get a little complacent. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
if it's not the perfect
Right.
tide with the perfect swell and the perfect, and these little moments pop up where it's like, oh, guess what? Everything kind of backed down and it looks good. Let's go.
Exactly. And if everybody else that you know does have day jobs too, then they're obligated or they're doing those obligations or family. And so there are more and more windows when you get a little bit older. But I also asked him about how the water safety works. And this is related to a story with Albee Layer this week. Albee Layer went on Instagram and he auctioned off a surfboard that he broke. Sean Ordonez SOS Shapes from Maui gun that he broke out at Jaws, I think on a wave that he has documented. So he put it on Instagram and he was like, look, we need to come up with a community fund for the water safety patrol. These are people who are out on skis at these big wave spots who have surfed those spots. Maybe they're still surfers at those spots, or maybe they've kind of taken their foot off the gas in terms of surfing, but they're still out there and they're experts and they're providing rescue for the surfers in the lineup. And there isn't like, look, we try to help them out when we can, but they're also providing all this content and imagery supporting in the system that it benefits all of these viewers around the world. So we need to kind of create a fund. So he said, I'm going to auction off a surfboard, and it's not just the winner who gets whose money we're collecting. We're collecting everybody's money in the auction. Whoever donates the most money will get the surfboard. And I guess he collected 10,000 bucks. The auction lasted 1 week. Kelly Slater happened to be the highest bidder. He bid $5,000. There were some other notable names who contributed money as well, but 10,000 bucks collected to the water safety team on Maui.
Yeah, that's interesting. My mind goes to, first of all, tip of the cap to Albee and to Kelly Slater for ponying up and making the energy to do all this stuff. And but I think to myself, the problem is that one-time auctions are just not evergreen enough to
Yeah.
fund this need. And so I'm thinking, God, what could we do with $10,000 so that there's something that grows money so that that 10 grand can actually continue to spit out funds. And of course, you're going to need more than 10,000 bucks to spit out, whatever, 7% return over a year or whatever it is. So good for them. I wish there was some way that we could all create something that was more evergreen.
Well, the reason I asked Aloe about it was because I realize you see skis darting in to go rescue people. And I'm like, well, Aloe has Luca, Luca has Aloe. So that's their responsibility. But there's going to be moments where your partner isn't enough.
Yeah.
And you do see multiple skis going in. So I was like, who are those people? And he basically said, look, exactly what I said. And he's like, these people are so passionate and they're in love with Mavericks that they're going to be out there basically doing it no matter what.
Yeah.
But the reality is they're also risking their lives. And so if we are able to kind of compensate them in some way, that is kind of reciprocity. Just you feel the need to be reciprocal in that scenario.
Yeah.
And he wasn't asking, obviously, for like public to step up and do it in any way. I like that Albie did do that because it just brings attention to the thing. But I don't know that it's your and my responsibility to solve.
No.
But there is kind of just be aware of it, I suppose, is all I'm saying.
A couple things, it's comes to mind. First of all, is that sadly these guys could be liable. Like
That's I
in a
hate that.
horrible situation, they could go in and help somebody, and however it turns out, maybe they don't get them on the ski, or the person gets injured, and that person turns around and sues the friggin' water safety for, like, sadly that guy exists
That's the
in this
world we live
world,
in.
and so there's that concept too, right? That that they're not only they're putting their lives at risk, but and they're not getting paid, but they could turn around and get sued.
It's the worst.
Yeah. So there's that, right? And then,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just, anyway, the other thing I was going to say is the name that comes to mind is Eric Nelson from Powerlines. He might be, have you ever interviewed him? He would be a great interview. Talk about a guy he's got over 25 years of stories. I mean, I
Yeah.
think he's been out there since the mid 90s. So probably 30 years of stories. Um, I mean, I don't know why maybe he's not available for an interview. I don't know.
I'll reach out. I've never reached out, but yeah, Aloe mentioned him repeatedly throughout as part of
Yeah.
his kind of mentor group.
Yeah. He's the guy that's been out there forever,
Yeah.
and, I remember one of the very first videos he put out, there was a guy that just the first, um, two-wave hold down that was actually on film. And the guy won an award, like the worst wipeout at the very first, big K2 Big Wave Awards or whatever it is that Bill Sharp was putting on. And it was just the meanest. And they like literally had him, his board tombstoning and him not coming up and the second wave breaking. Like the fact that that guy lived, I forget his name now, but I mean, obviously this was 30 years ago, but I remember it being such a moment of, oh my God, this place is gnarly. And that was only like 15-foot Mavericks. That wasn't even like what they're dealing with these days.
Also a shot across the bow for anybody who thought that they could step up to Mavericks, like be warned.
Yeah, that's the other thing about the lineups that you mentioned and the protocols within the lineup. At a place like Mavericks, I mean, it sorts itself out pretty quick. I mean, I don't think Washburn surfs there anymore. I don't really know, but I mean, at the top of the chain, you know who they are. The guys know who, and they also know if you're not in the top of the chain. And I think if you sit and wait your turn, they will give you your pass, and you'll be able to make your way out into the spot. But um, Mavericks takes care of itself, I think, regarding lineups relative to say, like Rincon or Swami's or someplace that's just a shit show.
That is true. That is one major difference. Well, the other thing that's been taking place since we last spoke was the Hui Backdoor Shootout.
Yeah. I watched some of it the first day.
So they ran 2 days or two partial days,
Yeah.
and just kind of to give you an outline of the format of the event, the field is comprised of 8 teams, and the surfers, there's 5 surfers on each team. Surfers all compete in 4 non-elimination heats. So everybody surfs 4 heats. The winning team will be determined by the best 5 waves of the event. And then the individual winner is crowned based on their top 3 scores. So whatever team has the best 5 scores, all 5 scores could be from one person on that team. But the team with the top 5 scores and then the individual with the top 3 scores is how this all shakes out. And day 1 ran on January 5th. Early morning, rising swell, lots of double ups, super clean. It got bigger as it filled in, and there was a lot of water moving. So it really wasn't like perfect pipe, but there were kind of a few heroic moments. And then day 2 was much more swell, much more water moving, not as clean. And again, a couple of heroic moments. So we haven't seen like a really clean, perfect day yet, but we have seen a few moments.
Yeah, I want to say I saw a nice wave of Makana Pangs. I watched some of the girls. I watched Team Japan, I think, on the first day. Um, they got one ride. One of their guys got an incredible backside tube and just sort of sneaked doggy doored it out, kind of the way, not quite as grand as the way Koa Smith did it during the pipe event. But so, yeah, there were some moments that were just ridiculous. And I guess we're on standby here as conditions and swell straighten out.
Yeah, Bethany Hamilton was a standout. Bethany Hamilton had a couple of waves. She made a couple of barrels, but she had 1 or 2 drops that would just looked. She makes the difficult look easy. You see her
Yeah.
perched on the top, and I'm like, I would pull back right at that moment. And she goes, navigates it effortlessly, pulls into the tube. So
I mean,
Bethany's still
she's
inspiring.
always on the edge. It's always precarious, whenever you watch a wave of Bethany's, you're like, it's no matter what, it's going to be late because, she's limited in her paddle ability. And so she's always just like just sneaking right underneath the lip and barely getting into it,
I know,
God
and
bless
she's
her, man. She's amazing. She's the most
well,
amazing surfer in the world. I mean, you and I've, there's years where I was like, this person's the greatest surfer ever when you really think about it. Like name me one other person that has one arm that charges pipe, and there aren't any.
well, now beyond that, we talk about getting older. She's
Yeah.
gotten older. We
Yeah.
talk about how fatherhood impedes her. Guess what?
Yeah.
She birthed the child.
More than
So,
one.
yeah, exactly. So whatever you think fatherhood has slowed you down with in your surfing, imagine if you actually carried to term and then birthed and then recovered and then paddled out back at pipe.
Yeah, that's some major commitment. She's a one of a kind. There's no
Yeah, no
doubt.
joke. No joke.
It's funny, I was thinking about history and women the other day, and I was like, okay, you know, what's the first woman that you can think of that's historical? Like that made history, that like made the history books, that made the narrative that was written back in 1350 or whatever it was, and certainly there's Cleopatra, there's a few, but my point is that there's men throughout history. Like men are just littered in history. That's all it is. It's just a full patriarchal thing. Like there's got to be more than one incredible woman like Catherine the Great or Cleopatra or whoever, And it's like take somebody like Bethany to go, okay, the man writing the history goes, okay, there's our woman. Let's write about her. There are
Yeah.
so many more women that are just amazing throughout history that have never just seen the light of day of these narratives because of the nature of the way history is accounted for.
Well, yeah, the men were the ones who were first to go to school, probably. The men's were the ones who then wrote about it because they had the schooling. And then the things that they did include women in the writings were more about their love interest than they were about anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, it makes sense. But
Yeah.
rightly or wrongly, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Speaking of the men,
Yeah.
Balaram Stack got an insane one.
Sure.
Luke Tima is a name that I've started to see in the last year or two.
Mm.
Hawaiian regular foot kid. He got a really crazy one. It's interesting to watch days like this because it isn't perfect. And so it looks so sketchy and scary. And you see somebody commit and you're like, they're committing to this drop, but I don't even know how this wave's going to shake out down the line. And so to see them kind of make those negotiations off the bottom and pick a line and, hang on and then potentially get gurgled out of it is all a little bit more interesting to me than just watching perfect, flawless pipeline. So seeing Luke Tima deliver on his potential, I think was great. And then one person whose name I cannot say enough, and I don't say enough, Benji Brand.
Yeah.
Benji Brand for like close to 10 years has been
Yeah.
quietly on every swell, getting some of the best waves every time, charging hard. Like he is gnarly.
Yeah. He is. And there's quite a few guys over there that are just sort of humble warriors, and he's one of them. It makes me realize that our culture has changed so much. Like when you and I were growing up in the surf culture, so to speak, in our teens and in our 20s and in our 30s, and I was drawn towards the surf star. I was drawn towards, you know, Rabbit Bartholomew, Mark Richards, these guys that were, when I was a teenager, were just like making history in Surfer Magazine. And our culture was geared towards that. And of course it's changed, it's shifted. It's not, I think part of it is the new COVID surfer doesn't care about surf stars or champions. You know what I mean? Like, not with the same passion that a 15-year-old surfer does. A 15-year-old surfer is like, oh my God, Clay Marzo. But the 30-year-old COVID surfer, which I think kind of dominates the demographic, the majority of who we are as a surf tribe, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, they just want experiences, and they have the money to pull it off. They don't care about watching their favorite ripper. They want to travel to exotic locations, and And they want gear for traveling. They want surfboards and wetsuits and NVS fins and backpacks and campers and outdoor adventures. And they want to make their own surfing stories, because they're like, dude, I want to go do that. You get to a place in your life and you're like, hey, I can do that. I don't need to like watch it. I can actually go do it. Little Johnny's double backflip doesn't move their needle at all, but traveling to like Dubai, believe it or not, to surf Kelly Slater's wave pool. That actually sounds intriguing. And I think that's where a big chunk of our culture is right now, is surfing experiences, not necessarily following Jimmy Joe's latest adventure at Waco.
See, I agree with everything you're saying, except the one detail that they don't want to watch their favorite ripper. I think they still absolutely do. And that's where you can point to Nathan Florence's success or somebody like him, or even just Torrin Martin, um, because we still want to watch that. It's just we're not when I was 15 and I was obsessed with Andy Irons or Shane Dorian, it was because not only was he ripping, but then I turn the page of the magazine and there's a big interview with him. And then I grab a video and there's a video with him. So it was the media, it was the industrial complex generating this obsession for me and just spoon feeding it to me. So of course, then I would eat it and be obsessed. But now without the centralized kind of system doing that, there's just a bunch of these touch points and you can follow the person along their own journey, but they're not cramming it down your throat, and you have a bunch of other touch points.
And as when we were kids, that that media cycle was like surfing contests, do the NSSAs, like just this is what Andy and Shane and Kelly and Rob and all of these guys did. They surfed in contests, they did the NSSAs, they won the NSSA Open at Lowers, they got a contract, they moved into the WSL, and their adventure around the world was just them doing well at Bell's Beach in a contest or whatever. And now our adventure around the world is Mason Ho in Norway or Nathan Florence in Norway or Morocco. So as these 30-year-olds who came into the situation, say in 2019, 2020, their prism that they're looking through is this one of outdoor adventure. And
Yeah.
They don't see Nathan Florence in a jersey winning a title, and I don't think they care.
No, they don't. I know this wasn't your intention to set up this segue, but this is a good time to remind people that we have two surf trips scheduled in 2025 if people do want to join us. The El Salvador one in April I think there's like 5 spots left last time I checked. We do resort takeovers. So the April one is at Punta Mango in El Salvador, and there's I think 20 spots or 18 spots because Scott and I are 19 and 20, and I think there's 5 left. So if you want to come April 1st through April 7th, join us in El Salvador. We got a really cool video from our 2024 trip that was very successful if you want to find that on YouTube. And then the other big announcement is Chicama, Peru. We've locked in the dates for Chicama, Peru, and that is August 27th through September 3rd. It's 7 nights. And Waterways Travel is organizing this for us. They make it super simple. Again, resort takeover. There's 22 rooms at Chicama. It's one of the world's longest lefts. And the way that this works is Peru has a lot of cultural things that of interest, but to get to this spot, it's pretty far removed. And once you're at this spot, you're basically at the resort. And it's in the desert, and you're perched on this hillside that the resort is built onto. And then the wave is directly out front. So you are just every room, restaurant, the pool, you're staring at the wave the entire time and picking the eyes out of it. And then there's a couple other spots nearby. So this package that we've got through Waterways provides transport to those other spots, also provides tow back service at Chicama so that you don't have to paddle back out.
Hell to the yes. That sounds amazing. Somebody, one of our listeners was like, "Hey, are you going to Chicama?" And I was like, "I don't know. It's a really busy time of year for me with the boardroom show coming up and blah, blah, blah." What you just told me, I think I can squeeze this in. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think I'm going to be able to squeeze this in. And thanks to Brian and everybody at Waterways, it's going to be a heck of a good trip. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. I'm locked in, so I will be there. For listeners who are want to hang with us, I will be there for sure. Scott is a maybe still, but we'll
I'm
let you
kind of
know.
a definite maybe. Like I
Okay.
mean, I can squeeze a week out of August. That shouldn't be. I still have, you know, a month and a half
Okay.
when I return to kind of focus in, and yeah,
And
I can
apparently
work from there. I can do
that
work from there.
that's what I was going to say. Apparently the resort has great Wi-Fi and all the amenities of anything that you're used to, and so
Yeah.
it's a comfortable stay. And the way that they worked out the pricing is surfers are one pricing, but if you want to bring family, if you want to bring your wife and kids, it's a lower price for them to add on. And it's a
Cool.
great family hang if you're comfortable just hanging at a resort the whole time. So
Cool.
email me if you want to get in on those. Surfsplendor@gmail.com or just reach out to waterwaystravel.com directly. Ultimately, if you email me, I'm just going to forward it along to Chris at Waterways. But either way, you can get all the info.
By the way, speaking of this, since we're on surfing tourism, I opened up one of these Google News alerts about the surfing industry, and it came from one of these like market trends websites, which is just, some AI thing that's spitting out content. You've probably seen these. Um, but it was a pretty interesting insights, and I'm just going to throw them at you right now. According to this market research, the surfing tourism market was valued at $64 billion in 2024. You're like, that can't be right. That's projected to reach $110 billion in 2034. Surfing tourism market. That's a lot. Now you got to understand that's probably includes everything, like the cost of the airfare, like not just, um, the 2023 recreational surfing tourism was dominated by, or that's what was dominated, recreational surfing tourism. In other words, you and I going surfing. Um, of that, domestic surfing tourism led that segment. So 71% are going to local travel preferences. In other words, like you and I going to Florida to go surfing or something like that, right? And of note, solo travelers account for 42% of that. In other words, individuals like, hey, man, let's go. You and me, boom. Anyway, these are just data points that are sort of boring, but
It's
that's
interesting.
that kind of
It's
blew me away. 64 billion. It's supposed to increase to 110 billion in 10 years.
it's a bigger number than I would have expected it to be. And I wonder, number one, how do they do the data collection? There's got to be such margin for error.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling it's things like how many tourists went to Hawaii this year? And
Yeah.
then on the little form you fill out, how many mentioned surfing as a recreation that they do or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
And then, okay,
Yeah.
well, what's the average cost of a hotel? Then they stayed 7 days. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
things. But even still, that number seems huge to me.
Yeah. 64 billion US
Um,
dollars. That's the global market.
so there's a stat that I learned from one of Tony Robbins' finance books 10 years ago that I like to remind myself of, and I'll remind you of it because it's staggering to understand the difference between a million and a billion. 1 million seconds is 12 days. Do you know how long 1 billion seconds is?
It's something like 112 years or something.
32 years.
32 years.
So a million seconds is 12 days. A
Right.
billion is 32 years. That's unfathomable. So when you see Elon Musk has $400 billion in wealth,
Yeah.
it's staggering. It's like,
Yeah.
and when you see 10 years ago, he had 2 billion. It's like, how do you go
Yeah.
from 2 billion to 400 billion? It's not just multiplying it by 10. That's like an unbelievable exponential and
Yeah.
also frightening the amount of power that you can wield with that amount of wealth. But yeah,
Do you think there's a point where should an individual be able to amount so much money that he owns the world?
I don't, well, should he? As
Can't,
if,
yeah, like,
should we put
is it
regulations in
okay with
place?
us as a global population
I
to
don't,
allow for an individual to amass so much money that he can own the world?
so
He
I
can
don't,
pay off, buy off, own, buy all the resources.
I don't believe in regulation. Like, I don't think we should regulate that. I prefer the free market capital version where you can go out and get what you can get. But I also think that even if you put the regulations in place, once you earn that much money, you start reworking the regulations.
Yeah,
That's what ends up happening. And
that's
whether you
exactly.
like it or not, whether I'm going to try to institute some moral, edict over it doesn't even matter because that's just what happens. And
I
that's
mean,
what
what if I
currently
could,
happens.
if, if I had so much money and you were standing in the way of me wanting to do something, and I was just like, how much? How much is it going to take? Like, I'll give
That's what
you a
happens all
billion
the
dollars.
time.
I'll give
Yeah.
you $1 billion.
Yeah.
You and your family will be set up for the rest of generations to come.
Hey,
All you have to do is just one minor little rationalization, move aside, let me buy up all the uranium deposits. And I mean,
you're
it's kind of
you're
gnarly.
well,
The oligarchy that's taking place. It's crazy.
you're a much kinder billionaire than the ones that I read about on the news because it's P Diddy to get what he wants doesn't offer you, hey, here's the money, agree to it or not. He takes what he wants, maybe pays you to shut up or hires somebody else to shut you up. That's the way that
Right.
it generally works.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'll take your billion.
Well, I figured mine would be a simpler example.
Well,
I'm not going to give you $1 billion. Come on, man. I'm going to
you have
strong arm you. I'm
400.
going to strong arm you.
Oh, I know that was poor negotiating tactic, by the way. You could have offered me a million and I would have taken it. You could have offered me 12 days and I would have taken
I'm known for my poor negotiating.
it. I'm known the world over.
Yeah.
Well, interesting. I don't know if you had something else you were leading into, but I got an email from our buddy Tony Roberts, who has Real Surf Stories YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, dude, we message back and forth. We pay attention to each other's works. And he goes, I just finished this video that I'm making about Butch Van Artsdalen. He's like, did you have any idea about this guy's kind of all of
Legacy.
the legacy, all the things that this guy has done, like his whole world? And I'm like, no, I mean, I know his name. And like at some point Scott educated me that he was the original Mr. Pipeline, but I really don't know very much about him other than like he's respected, and I've seen footage or video of him and imagery and stuff like that. And so I watched Tony's video. I'll read the email actually of what he said to me because it's a lot, it sums it up. He goes, I dug in and it became apparent this guy might be one of the most all time slept on legends in our sport. Cut his teeth in the rambunctious and volatile wind and sea crew, the first Mr. Pipeline, the first guy to backdoor the peak at Waimea, Switchfoot no less. Some of the best rides at sunset in that era, but on his on land persona is truly what set him apart. A full on prankster, drunk, and fearless brawler. He took his signing bonus money from the San Diego Padres and moved to the islands where he was taken in and endeared by the Kanakas like no Howley ever. Personally sponsored by Duke Kahanamoku, loved by the finest ladies, respected by the surf world. Even Dora looked up to him. Yet he drank himself into depression and death at age 38. I'd be stoked if you watched the video, and I know Bassie would probably dig it as well. What a character.
Yeah. Look, I'm looking forward. I love all the stuff TR does. And I'm sure I'll learn a lot. I'm sort of one of these guys that knows, just enough to sound like I know what I'm talking about, but I'm not really a deep diver on too much stuff. So I'm sure I can learn a lot about him, and he it's sort of a sad situation, right? I mean, to die of alcoholism is just kind of a bummer, like it's kind of like what there was so much good that he did do and that he could have continued to do. And yeah,
Well,
it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
what I appreciate about what Tony's doing on his YouTube channel is um, when I grew up, magazines were kind of the Bible of where you would get surf information from. And those magazines don't exist. But if I want to learn about something now, it's kind of spread through various sources on the internet, or the Encyclopedia of Surfing is the one landing spot where you know you can go and trust the source and kind of get a certain amount of information. But it's not comprehensive. You know, Matt can't archive everything. And he even said he stopped archiving after a certain point because it's just all happening so fast now. And the other stuff hasn't even been done yet, the historical stuff. So I like somebody taking time. Tony, first of all, has a passion for storytelling, the characters of surfing and surf history. And he has video production background. So he's taking all of those things and then going out and pulling all these pieces from various parts on the internet and putting them together into one 30-minute essay on these people. It's a book report on these people, you know? And I noticed his channel in the past was documenting surfing that was happening somewhere. And now he's spending a lot of time doing these things, or even just like there was a rivalry between Tom Curran and Tom or Aki, you know, and like, here's the important events. Here's footage from those important events. So taking the time to put all of that together for learning lessons for you and I is where I find the value.
Yeah, I love it. There's so much there to unpack. One of them is Matt Warshaw and his Encyclopedia of Surfing. It really needs to be adopted and or taken in by an academic institution that could give it the resources in, I guess, labor force that it needs to be. It's already robust, and God bless Matt. He does so much hard work, but I mean, he needs a staff of 20 just to kind of stay up on everything, you know? And
I talked to him about
that would, of course, give him the opportunity to do the fun stuff that he likes to do, the little nuggets. And then TR and I have been going back and forth just a little bit about a guy named Mike Cruteau.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you and I maybe spoke about Cruteau, but I spoke with my friend John Durant about him because I find all these little anecdotes about Mike Cruteau. Nobody seems to have the full narrative about Cruteau, but everyone has their moment in time. Like Cruteau was up in Santa Cruz and Cruteau was down here in San Diego, and he had a Shaping Bay and Vista. And I've heard so many radical stories about Mike Cruteau that I know TR, when I talked to Tony about it, I think Tony rode for Cruteau when he was up in Santa Cruz. And so here's another guy, kind of like Butch, where you know a little bit, but it would be great to have the complete understanding, narrative of these guys. And Butch, of course, we have a lot more to glean from.
Yeah.
So
totally.
Mike Cruteau, you know what it was? I was talking to TR about Cruteau on Instagram. We were doing a little messaging. The next day, I was out surfing, and I had a Stu Kenson Twinzer, and I had Stu make this really radical E-wing, like a fluted wing that was very, very defined. And Michael Willis walked up to my board. He goes, "Hey, Scott." And he pointed at the wing and he goes, "Mike Cruteau." This is the day after I was talking to Tony. I'm like, that is so random that that's the first word, thing out of his mouth. And he points at that fluted wing and he goes, "Mike Cruteau invented that." And I'm like, really? Like, that's interesting. Like, there's a little moment. Now, of course, you know how surfboard design, there's guys in Australia, like people are designing shit at the same time and don't even know it.
Yeah.
And so I'm not here to say that Cruteau invented the fluted wing. That's I'm not the, God forbid I have Joel chiming in, but it was so fascinating. And the Cruteau stories are out there, and there's a lot of them. So these little anecdotes, if we could piece them all together in a Cruteau timeline, it'd be fun.
Well, talking about the Warshaws needing a workforce, I talked to him about that. And I was like, even if you scan all the magazines, like if you have all the surf magazines that ever existed, the amount of time to scan them is a huge workforce, And so he's he has actually started to have conversations with universities where they can get interns who get credits for something, who can do the manual labor of that, just scanning the pages of the magazine.
Yeah.
Once all that information is digitized, you can then run a system to just search the word Mike Cruteau or the name Mike Cruteau, and it can pull up information from all those magazines, you know? So that is where ultimately we are going.
Well, of course, this brings up the Surfing Heritage and Culture Center. I was on the board there for 8 years, and before that, I was on the oral history committee, and they had all these education committees. But I mean, at one point, and I think they still are, they were literally doing that. Like they were trying to scan every piece of media, and they started with this insane library of images. And I think Steve Wilkins was
Yeah.
tasked with scanning every single image and then putting metadata on every single image. And just the piles of images that the poor guy had to scan and deal with, he barely made a dent after like whatever, 10 years, And that's without even dealing with those magazines and the films and the VHS cassettes and the stuff. There's just so much radical content. The volume of it is just next level. So
Yeah.
it is a massive undertaking. And of course now with AI, you really want to
Set the record straight.
and own your own content.
Uh,
Like
yeah.
basically the way I understand AI, and again, I'm no expert, don't breathe down my neck. But what I understand is that everyone's going to have their own AI channel. In other words,
Mm.
we're going to own it instead of right now they just scrape whatever and you don't even know if they're taking your content and you're ripped off. Everyone's going to have their own ability to own that space. I forget where I'm going with all this other than wow, what a job that they have. And I know that Matt's talking with the guys at Shack, and he's on some level he might be getting grants from Spencer Crowell and some others over there. I don't have any insight into that.
Well, I'm tied in and I'm getting involved actually in an effort to help and even get funding and stuff for some of this stuff. So I'm all about it. I see the value in it.
I just did a
Um,
search for Mike Cruteau on the Encyclopedia of Surfing, and nothing came up.
I know you've got a plane to catch, right? Or you
Yeah,
got
I
a
do.
heart out.
Yeah,
I
I
want
do.
to give you my Duke of the Week.
Yeah.
In relation to kind of this big wave conversation and everything that's been happening in recent weeks, Jojo Roper has bubbled to the top and is my Duke of the Week. He's coming to participate in this talk story that we're doing at the Belly Up on the 21st.
Yeah.
And so I've just started tracking him a little bit more closely. And it's like, dude, the guy was at Jaws. Then he competed in the or in the Eddie. The very next day, he was at Mavericks. So that means he finished the Eddie, jumped on an airplane, got to San Francisco at 5 a.m. on the 23rd, went straight from the airport in San Francisco to Mavericks, and was in the water to catch some of the biggest waves ever at Mavericks.
Yeah, he's an incredible human being. What a great. I'm just such a huge fan of the whole Roper clan, and there's some fascinating stories with Jojo. I mean, he's got just such an incredible lineage.
I
His
know.
godfather is Skip Fry. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like you're talking about San Diego royalty. So super stoked on what a hard charger. In a lot of ways, like Aloe, this is a guy who's just focused and dedicated, and he's just in it for the pure radical adrenaline rush that these big waves are giving these guys. And tip of the cap to those guys.
Duke of the Week, man.
Yeah.
So, or of a lot longer span of time too. But if you want to, JoJo's going to recap all of what I just said with Rusty, his shaper, on stage at the Belly Up on the 21st. It's Tuesday, the 21st of January. And Taylor Knox is going to be on stage with us as well, talking about stuff. But our pals, Weekend
Yes.
Vans was at the boardroom show.
Yeah.
They bought 2 pairs of tickets and they're giving them away for free to listeners who want to get involved. So weekendvans.com/surf. Go there, give them your email address, and then you'll be entered to win. They're going to pick those 2 winners on Friday morning or Thursday night or Friday morning.
All
So we'll
right.
announce them on Friday. You'll still have time to buy tickets after that too. But if you want to get a chance to get a couple of them for free, go to weekendvans.com. And then my must-see moments, Scott. I don't know if you saw this, but John, this was on the Waxhead's Instagram account. John Florence's first wave at Sunset Beach a couple of days ago, riding a 6'3". Will you watch this thing with me?
Yes.
John riding a 6'3", double, triple overhead sunset, big open wrap, beautiful off the bottom, tucks into the pocket, barrel. Oh, keep going. Long barrel. Oh, comes out of the little eye hole. Big wrap on the inside, banks off the whitewash. What else you got, John? Oh, big open face carve.
I watched this wave numerous times when it showed up on the internet. And what's incredible about it is the very last bit of the tube at the beginning, the little change and adjustment in his line so that he rides high enough to thread the little eyeball that you mentioned. And you'll see it right here. He's in the tube and
Yeah.
it's amazing. The
It's
little
like
bit,
3 pumps actually to get up there.
yeah, it's pretty crazy. So yeah,
I
man, that
watched
is
this.
your must-see moment. And we just saw it.
Well, because same as you, it came across my feed. I watched it and I just went, oh my God, like that's a 10-point ride.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of subtlety in what's going on. John's not celebrating, but it is everything that you want in surfing. That wave is incredibly difficult to ride. There's so much energy, there's so much face to the wave. It's not, there's parts that's cupped out from top to bottom, and there's parts that are just super duper slopey like a snowboard ride. And the way that he threads all of those elements together is insane. It really, really is an incredibly difficult wave to ride. He surfed it flawlessly. And then my final thought was, oh my gosh, that is 10 times better than anything we'll ever see in Abu Dhabi. The idea that that wave is not on tour and that Abu Dhabi is, there's nothing that will take place at Abu Dhabi that will ever capture even a tenth of my attention in the way that that wave did.
Yeah, it was
Full stop.
beautiful. Hey, right, one more thing before we leave. Tomorrow and the next day could be really good for the Hui Backdoor Shootout. So look for that if you're interested. It's going to be pumping and good conditions. David, until next time, adios and aloha.
Let me hit Surfline or Surfrider ad real quick. Scott, surfrider.org, we do a lot of pointing to threats that are existing that we have to deal with in the future, and we got a bunch of work that we need to be done. Let's take a moment to celebrate. A couple of days ago, the Biden administration just signed in a protection order against all new drilling, ocean offshore drilling for oil and gas development. This protects 625 million acres of ocean off the coast of the US to prevent any new drilling. And this is kind of something that's agreed upon by both political parties, by most voters, that is just a bad thing for not only the environment, but it affects weather systems. It turns out to not be great for the economy, other than the couple of oil companies who are benefiting for it. There's studies and data that supports all of this information. And also the Surfrider Foundation has been involved for 40 years in various initiatives in various locations to prevent versions of this. So the administration kind of signing it in as an order, protective order, is a resounding win for Surfrider and anybody who has supported the efforts.
Yeah, you know what? Tip of the cap for a clean and robust and vibrant ocean. I think all surfers can agree to that.
Totally agree. And if you want to get involved and support Surfrider through future efforts, surfrider.org is where you go. Become a member, support the work, and then you'll also stay informed with everything that's happening. All right. Thank you.
Okay, buddy.